Hi there, this is DM Nell, and I am here to bring you the conclusion of our Born to Die novice tier adventure from the Tales of the Demon Lord campaign. And we played last night. It was great fun. We had pretty much one main encounter and a couple little minor things that happened. So where we picked up at the end of from the end of the last session was that the group had made their way to the island where Master Dreen's daughter had been taken by the gang that kidnapped her, the Rude Boys, and was ransoming her. And so they had already taken out the lone guard that was standing on the beach, and they were now gathered on the beach trying to figure out how they were going to get the daughter back and to deal with the gang members. Now the gang members had a camp in the center of the island, or more towards the center of the island, and it was nighttime, so they saw the campfire and they could hear them talking. But they knew there was 9 of them, or 8 of them now, since they took one out on the beach. So they didn't want to necessarily go charging in there and fight them, especially since the revelation that they had gotten from their magical sword, or their enchanted sword, that told them that there was a demon within 100 yards of their current location. So somewhere on the island there was a demon, and they were not in any hurry to go rushing into a fight with a demon. So they decided that they were going to make some noise and try to lure some of the gang members down to the beach, a few at a time, so that they could take them out that way. Now, the warrior, Kane, decided before they do that, he wanted to do some reconnaissance. So he snuck up the path to get kind of a view of what was going on in the camp. And when he did that, he managed to get close enough to see the gang members, their tents, and Candace Dreen tied up and gagged by the fire. So he snuck back and told the others what he had witnessed, and they all took positions in the foliage near the path that led to the camp. So this is the map that I used for that. Now, funny thing about this map, just a pause from the story here, is that I didn't have this map prepared for this adventure. I had the camp map prepared for the adventure, this one, which we'll get to in a minute, because I thought that the battle would take place there. I didn't stop to consider when I was planning this adventure that they would try to lure the gang members down to the beach. So, and I didn't have a beach map set up, and I didn't want to do that in a theater of the mind type of scenario. So what I did was I had the players kind of tell me what they were doing, where they're hiding, and so on and so forth. While they were doing that, I actually went into the Roll20 marketplace, did a search for beach, and quickly found a good map that was suitable for this encounter, downloaded it, and drew it over to this encounter page while the PCs were telling me what they were, or what the players were telling, while the players were telling me what they were going to be doing. So I think it was pretty seamless. I don't think that the players didn't know that I didn't have this map prepared. So anyway, that's just an aside. So back to the story. The heroes then take positions in this foliage here. And Kane hides right here behind this bush, and it was his intention, since he is a musician, he has a musical instrument as part of his background. He can play some music, so he was going to use his instrument to play a tune, drawing the curiosity of the people from the camp to come and investigate. Well, he goes to reach for his musical instrument and finds that it's no longer strapped to him. It's missing. He also finds that he's missing a couple of arrows. So he's like looking around, wondering what happened. But before he could figure it out, the group heard some snickering coming from the foliage behind them. Matthias, the Jotun, went to go investigate, so he came over here and started digging through the bush, only to have his face sprayed with a stream of urine, and followed by laughter. So at that point in time, before Matthias could do anything further, the group heard one of the rude boys actually walking down the path towards them. So Matthias decided to forget what was going on inside the bush and to move over here to intercept the person coming down the path. Well, as he started moving this way, a branch came out from the bush and tried to trip him. But he's 9 feet tall, so and quite strong. So his muscular legs basically snapped the twig in half as he walked past. But he almost did stumble and fall. He righted himself before he could do that, and he managed to make his way over here. However, his erratic movement did draw the attention of the rude boy that was walking down the beach, who was quite surprised. And, not surprised, he was quite shocked. But due to the fact that the Jotun was not quiet or, not trying to hide his movements, then the rude boy saw him and was prepared for the coming fight. So we began a battle at this point. The rude boy was right here on the edge of the map. The other players started to attack him, but they were rolling rather poorly. The rude boy took this opportunity then to turn tail and run back to camp to alert his companions that the island was, I can't really say it was under attack, but that they had company, unwelcome company. So at this point, I had to move the fight over to the other map, which was kind of a weird transition because Kane was way back here and he was unable to move as quickly onto the other map as the other three. But basically we just counted the squares, and I told him he had to move that many before he could appear in the first square in the next map. So it worked out okay. So then we moved the action over to this map, and it started down here in the corner with the rude boy running towards the camp, but the gang caught, or not the gang, but the heroes caught up to him and managed to strike him down, but not before he alerted the others in the camp, including the camp's leader. The camp's leader came out of his tent and alerted the others that were in the perimeter of the camp, and they all moved in to attack. So most of the battle took place in this area right here. The Jotun moved up on the hill. Kane stood behind and fired arrows. The two dwarves started off down here, but they eventually moved up. And the fight was almost even at the beginning, but in fact, I accidentally had the leader fire his crossbow at the Jotun twice in consecutive rounds, which you can't do that because it takes an action to reload a crossbow in this game, which I didn't realize. So I had to actually retcon that, because that actually took Matthias out. He was incapacitated at that point after being hit by two crossbow bolts. And so he was down for the count, but after realizing my mistake, I retconned it, re-rolled the damage for just a sword strike instead of a crossbow bolt. And the difference was enough to enable Matthias to remain in the battle. And that was enough to for him to take out the leader, which pretty much turned the tide of the battle. I had a couple of the rude boys make some morale checks, which was basically just a will challenge roll. And if they failed, then they would take off running. But one or two of them failed. They took off running off the side of the map. The other rude boys started falling, and the one that was up here fighting with the leader decided, I give up. And he threw down his weapon, or dropped his weapon, and surrendered. At this point, the battle was pretty much over. with most of the rude boys either driven off or killed. And Matthias had a thought that he had promised Master Dream that he would kill all the ones responsible for kidnapping his daughter. So Matthias decided to strike down the rude boy that had surrendered, which he did. And so at this point, I gave Matthias a point of corruption. Now, the player of Matthias didn't think that that was right because he was honoring his agreement with Master Dream. But I pointed out to him that this guy had surrendered. He was weaponless. And Matthias, a 9-foot-tall Jotun, basically struck him down with an axe in cold blood. So I told him the Demon Lord was in the void watching this and basically clapping, cheering Matthias on. So the corruption was warranted, and I gave him a point of corruption. So the player didn't agree with it, but oh well. The corruption of Matthias has begun. So at this point, the heroes pretty much started to loot the camp. Cain went up and freed Candace from her bonds, and as he did so, he caught a glimpse of a tattoo on the back of her neck, and the tattoo was the same tattoo as what they had seen earlier, which is the symbol of the Demon Lord. So didn't quite know what to make of that, but his sword was still vibrating, so they knew that there was still a demon around somewhere, and they were starting to suspect it was her, that the demon had somehow possessed her. She was acting appreciative at first, but then she started acting all haughty and more, looking down at them, basically, expecting them to cater to her. And so Matthias just basically yanked her up to get her on her feet. While he was doing that, she was trying to make eye contact with him for some reason. He was just like, not interested in the human female who was apparently trying to flirt with him. But it's not what she was doing. The demon within was actually trying to cast a spell to charm Matthias, but unfortunately, it failed to do so. So eventually, the demon realized that it was not really in a position to reveal itself here, so it went back deep inside Candace, and at that point, the hero's sword stopped vibrating as they were leaving the island. Now, let me back up just a little bit here. Before they left the island, Cain realized that some more of his things were missing, especially his interesting item that he had rolled when he created the character, which was a box of cigars, which he really liked, his box of cigars. So I had the heroes make a perception check, and one of them smelled cigar smoke coming from this nearby bush over here. And so the heroes, or actually I should say Cain, went over to the edge of the cliff here and shot an arrow into the bush. He rolled very well. And so I said that he skewered something inside. So something screamed out in pain. And then they saw two figures coming out of the bush. One was dragging the other, which had the one that was being dragged had this big arrow sticking out of him. And the other one was a small humanoid with pointy ears, sharp features. I was trying to describe something that would be kind of a fey creature, essentially, without coming out and saying it was a fey creature. But I wanted to also kind of maybe give them the idea that maybe this was the demon or demons. So they weren't really sure what to make of this thing. And this thing was cursing at them, throwing all kinds of racial slurs and curse words at them. And so they gang up on the creature and basically kill it. In doing so, they recover Cain's items from the various bushes in the area, and then they leave the island. That's when the buzzing of the sword stopped. as they took Candace back to Crossings and to her home to be returned to her father. Now, when they took her, it was early in the morning. It was well after midnight, probably about 3 o'clock in the morning at this point. And so her father was up waiting, nervously, anxiously awaiting her to be returned to him. Was very grateful, but also tired and not wanting to entertain at 3 o'clock in the morning. So he thanked them all, told them to keep the ransom money, said that he owed them a debt of gratitude. And at that point, he excused him and his daughter, started closing the door. And as they watched the door shut, they saw Candace through the closing door. They saw her eyes turn completely black and this evil smile across her face as the door shut. And so that was their confirmation that the demon that they were sensing or detecting was in fact possessing Candace. So that was the end of the session. I kind of left out a few things that were rather humorous throughout the session. One of them was the fact that the dwarf priest, Ekna, was having a hell of a time trying to hit anything this evening. And it got so bad that it brought to mind, because he kept saying how he was disappointing the honored dead that he worships. And that brought to mind a scene from the movie Mulan, where the ancestors were talking to Mulan and the dragon, and they were all talking back and forth. Basically, it was a humorous scene in the movie, and so that image kept popping in my head. So during the one of the rounds where Ekna was rolling poorly, I actually did a search for spirit or ghost, and what came up was this dream vestige thing, which had several faces on it, which was perfect for a representation of the honored dead, which is basically Ekna's ancestors and the dwarven ancestors. So I dragged that out there, and for a moment Ekna thought that a ghost was attacking, but then I said, no, these these are the spectral images of your ancestors that are appearing and basically shaking their head and saying how disappointed they were in you, and they were actually heckling you at certain points, telling each other that they were from that side of the family and so forth. This kind of this actually made the player laugh, but it had the effect on Ekna to try to redeem himself in the eyes of the honored dead, which he did later on in the battle. He started rolling better. But one scene that was hilarious was that in trying to impress the honored dead, there was a battle going on here. There was actually two rude boys ganging up on Gruntbelly, and Ekna was over here. So Ekna wanted to run towards this rock and basically bounce off of it to attack one of the rude boys. And I said, okay, but as you get to the quote-unquote rock, you realize it's not a rock, it's a bush. And the way he rolled for that particular attack was so badly that I said he didn't even realize it was a bush. He basically, jumped up to try to bounce off of it, and he ended up, knee deep with thorns going up his trouser leg, branches and thorns going up his trouser leg, as his leg buried itself into the bushes. The player was just laughing his ass off during this whole thing, as were we all. It was a very funny scene. And then I had the honored dead heckling him during that scene as well. So it was pretty funny, pretty fun. And another thing to note that I should probably mention as a feature of Roll20 is you can't really tell on my DM's map, but I have dynamic lighting set up because this was happening at night. And so the only light that was coming in was moonlight, which was not enough to illuminate all of the areas, especially the the patchy areas that were covered by trees. So I actually had the dynamic lighting set, and Matthias and Kane are unable to see in the dark, whereas the two dwarves can see in the dark. So those two players were having some difficulty in the battle because there were blacked out areas that they couldn't see. And they thought it was a glitch in the map, but I kept explaining to them, no, it's just too dark. You can't see there because there's not a light source that enables you to see that area. And it was, I think, a nice reminder that things aren't always as clear as an overhead view of a map when you're in a fight, especially at night on a strange island you've never been on. So it's nice to have that feature to throw some areas into some obscure regions on the map so that they can't exactly see what's going on and plan their battle tactics, metagame them to the nth degree. So it was that was an interesting wrinkle to the whole fight. Not that it made a whole lot of difference because the heroes came out in the end without taking a whole lot of damage, but still, it was nice to have that feature in there. Okay, so I think that was about all that I wanted to talk about for last night's game. For the next game, which will be the Curious Case of the Errant Swine adventure, I already have it all set up here, as you can see. It's going to take place about a week after this session, so the heroes will have a chance to go back and shop, restock their characters, and to level up, which they're now second level, which is the last level in the novice tier. So I'm looking forward to the next session. Should be great fun. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and end this video, and I will catch you on the other side of my next game. Alrighty.